Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to the Fitton Center for Creative Arts. My name is Ian Mackenzie Thurley. I'm the Executive Director here, and as ever, it gives me great pleasure to welcome you here to the Fitton Center for our continuing series of Celebrating Self. Wonderful to see a full house here today at the Fitton for what I believe will be a fantastic event. Again, talking about the successes and, of course, the future success of Hamilton. So today, I'm here to introduce Mike Dingeldein, and probably in this town, a man who needs no introduction. But he'll get one anyway. Even if I didn't want to know Mike, I'd have a very hard time. You may or may not know he designed this very building that we stand within, all three sections of it. And if anybody's wondering, Mike's mom's over there. She didn't even start the applause. Mike redesigned my house with a core fund, which you'll hear more about coming up. Mike sits on more committees than you can imagine, including the City of Sculpture. To that, I have to give him some credit or some blame for the blue baby. Things happened quickly there, and it's somebody like Mike with a vision like that that helped us bring that to fruition, and indeed with Baroque Trajectory that is sitting out there right now. But even if we ignored all those things, our daughters go to the same ballet school, not quite in the same ballet class, but if you want to ask Mike how the Nutcracker goes round and round, he could probably direct the show himself. He has seen it more times than any other human being I know, apart from Nureyev. So for me, our lives are inextricably intertwined, but there's a reason for that, because Mike is so heavily involved in this community. He is a Hamilton boy through and through. He quite literally bleeds blue, but leads from the front, but not a man who's used to taking accolades, and that's not what he's there for. His family, his community, he believes in, and as I said, quite literally leads with the front with that, and involved in so many exciting projects and so many committees, and you'll see that a lot from all of the Dingeldein family, involved in so many community projects, taking this community forward. And I've been really excited by that. When I arrived here, it's coming on 4 years ago, there was a change in Hamilton that I wasn't aware of. And I just certainly didn't know Mike, and I didn't know Joshua, and I didn't know the mayor, people I've got to know over the years. I didn't know there was a strategic plan, but you could tell something was up in a positive way. There was something going on in this city that you could just tell, but I didn't know what it was. As I said, I hadn't read the plans, I hadn't seen the vision, but there was an energy about this city, and that's drawn from the community. This is a city that gets things done because it wants to get things done. It's not waiting for anybody, though we've had magnificent help from the state and federal governments with things, but it's been community driven, and it's people like Mike who's been part of that community to help lead that charge, to enable people to enact change. And that's a really important part of any community. We've had great successes here in Hamilton, but plenty more to come, and that's what we're here to talk about today. So, with no further ado, may I please introduce you to a man of many titles, but I will just call him Mr. Mike Dingeldein. Thank you so much.
Okay, thanks to Ian. Nice introduction. I'm trying to turn this spin a little different, because I know a lot of you have seen me talk about a lot of these things before, so I'm trying to make it a little fresh. What's occurred to me in the last year and a half is that we have overwhelmingly favored quality of life investment in this community. Now, I will talk about why that happened and how that happened. But that was counterintuitive, because when you talk to cities who are Rust Belt cities like us who say it's time to revitalize, it's time to recover, you think add jobs, bring in private investment, do those things. That brings in money into the city coffers, and we can do more things with more money. But what we have done, and I will credit Council and Joshua Smith a lot in this presentation, is we've set ourselves on a foundation of investing in our quality of life first. And that, to me, has been the big difference maker. When I go to other cities, I'm going to Springfield tomorrow and Defiance next week, they want to know what we're doing in Hamilton and how we're doing it. And those are the kind of things that I want to share, is that there are some special things, whether it was great luck or great wisdom or a combination of both. Quality of life is the basis for what I'm going to share with you today. So we're all in the midst of a trend change. We're all in the midst of an idea, and this is US-wide, but it's particularly in traditional urban cities, especially Rust Belt cities. So cities like Pittsburgh and Cleveland and Cincinnati have all started to come back with some of the same trend, and that is there is a quality of life in cities that is beneficial. It is different. It is discerning. It is something unique that people want. So for the first time since the World War II, a third of our population in America are living in urban environments again. And so that is something we can all take advantage of. It's here, it's now. We don't know if it's a trend forever, but for right now, cities are trending. They are good places to live. And we didn't know that 6, 7, 8 years ago. We just started to hear about it 4 or 5 years ago. But there's a lot of good things in cities. And the one thing I've always said about Hamilton is we had an amazing industrial wealth in Hamilton at the turn of the century. It went away. The jobs went away. The companies went away. But they built a city behind them that still is here. And so the investment that Champion Paper made, the investment that Beckett Paper made, the investment that Niles Toolworks made in Hamilton is still here. And it's a lot of good things that we can recover. So that's what we're doing. So 10 years ago was the last time I spoke with this particular group in this particular event. And I was talking, and again, we had no idea about our revitalization path at that point. But my thesis at that point was that there's a social value to the arts in our community. And how did a city like Hamilton have Pyramid Hill and the Fitton Center, and recently at that time, the City of Sculpture? And so those three things to me were amazing that a city like Hamilton had those. And so I presented this whole paper, and I'm not going to represent it today, but it was the idea that there was the idea of understanding what the value of arts and culture were to a city. And cities have arts and culture because we have so much diversity in cities. The argument was the government and foundations and people that provide money to the arts were pushing us up on a curve toward instrumental benefits. Show how you create jobs. Show how you improve test scores in school. Those are the things that grantors will give you money for if you're an arts organization. But what this man's thesis was about was we were forgetting, accidentally, not necessarily on purpose, we were forgetting about the stuff at the bottom, this quality of life stuff, the intrinsic stuff. So the word intrinsic is the opposite end of the scale from instrumental. Instrumental is objective, you can count it, you can put it down on paper, you can justify it. Intrinsic is something that's gut level feel, and it's important, and he argues it's way more important, but we were being pushed, naturally for good reason, the wrong way on the curve. So we did studies. The Fine Arts Fund in Cincinnati, which is now ArtsWave, they proved that they were the third highest economic impact driver in Cincinnati. They were just behind the Bengals and Kings Island, and they were just ahead of the Reds. I mean, they were a big deal. The arts organizations in Cincinnati had a huge economic impact. So the government said, okay, we'll give you money, we'll support you, we'll continue to provide money through the federal government for arts. We studied right here a program called Spectra Plus, and we learned that students were performing better on reading and writing and arithmetic because they were immersed in some kind of arts education. And Hamilton has continued to keep their arts and fine arts well-funded in Hamilton so that we can continue to have that success. That's instrumental, and it's great, and it makes people feel good. But this is what we were pushing away from. The fact that being immersed in the arts was part of a quality of life, that it made us happier as people, it made us more connected as a society, it made us more connected as individuals, and it connected us across boundaries that we weren't comfortable with. It even had impacts on how we survived, aged, and lived our lives. And so these were important things. And then we got a sociologist who kind of stepped in the middle of it all and said, I'm going to move us back to the instrumental argument and say that if a city like Hamilton or Pittsburgh or Cincinnati or anywhere wants to survive and revive, they need to immerse themselves in what's called the creative class. He's a sociologist. This book is really important. It's really been influential in our society, but it's really hard to read because it's a bunch of numbers and arithmetic stuff that I don't get too interested in. But he's trying to prove with math and with sociology that the creative class is really a factor in all cities' recovery. So this was his quote in the book. The bottom line is that cities need a people climate even more today than they need a business climate. This means supporting creativity across the board and building a community that is attractive to creative people, not just to high-tech companies. Instead of subsidizing companies, stadiums, retail centers, communities need to reinvest in the kind of places that succeed in attracting and retaining creative people. Those that nurture a creative environment prosper, those that don't will fail. So in 2007, I think he wrote this book in 2005, I was up here telling you that we're lucky to have the arts and culture we have in Hamilton, and if maybe that's something we can hold on to and grab onto and move forward. It was a gut level feel. I had no math, I had no proof. But we were a city that did have a history in the arts. To this day, I still think we're the only city whose logo is based on a sculpture, a piece of art. So I think that's very cool. We had all kinds of community connections that were built through art. And then in 2000, August of 2000, something pretty extraordinary happened. We opened the new Government Services Center. We decided art contest, a sculpture contest for a piece of art in front of that building was important. Jack and Shirley Mosier are here. I don't think they knew that day that they started the City of Sculpture all by themselves. I want to thank them because they underwrote this entire piece. It wasn't a slam dunk in terms of popularity because people didn't like contemporary art as much as they liked traditional art. So we had a Journal News article that showed half the page of the opinion pages hated it, the other half loved it. What I thought of, it launched the City of Sculpture. And in fact, Governor Bob Taft was here to dedicate the building, and he declared Hamilton, Ohio, the City of Sculpture that day. And so ever since, we have been placing public sculpture at a rate much higher than most cities. And in fact, we have 55 public sculptures in Hamilton. And per capita, I don't think anybody, not even Santa Fe or Charleston, South Carolina, actually can touch us because of the size of our city and the size of our collection. So we've done all kinds of sculpture. And again, not for the purpose of an arithmetic or an absolute proof that this is improving our quality of life. How does public sculpture do that? We didn't know, but we've gotten very significant pieces that have been made and placed all over the world and ended up landing here in Hamilton, which is pretty cool. I think we should take a lot of credit for Lin-Manuel's Hamilton because that pose comes from our sculpture. I'm thinking we're losing some copyrights from the millions of dollars that he's making. And then great sculptors like Glenna Goodacre, who became friends with the Markhams, and the Markhams commissioned this piece here in Hamilton. And again, tremendous quality and tremendous quantity of sculpture that we have. And all this was a backdrop, really, to entering the city, to being in the city. It was very passive. People didn't have to pay attention, but if you drove on High Street every day, you passed these sculptures every day. We still commemorated our history with sculpture. This was our 1913 flood commemoration. And has anyone been on the treasure hunt for Robert McCloskey plaques? There's 13 of these plaques around the city. If you go to the Welcome Center, you can get the piece of paper that sort of leads you to where they are. There at his childhood home, there where the donut store was, they're in all different places in his stories, and you can follow these plaques around the city. But again, it's commemorating our history and obviously our relationship with Robert McCloskey. We supported local sculpture, so we promoted local artists, learning how to do their craft, and had some fantastic outcomes from that. Temporary sculpture, Ice Fest occurs every 2 years now here in Hamilton, but it is a fantastic draw of people to our culture and our art. And now we are featured on a piece of smartphone software called AutoCast. If you don't have it, you should, because not only does it tell you where every piece of sculpture is in Hamilton, it also tells you who was the artist, that you hear a voice over from those artists telling you how they came up with the idea for their sculpture. You can get mapped around the city on your phone, but you can also see collections of art all over the country. So your phone knows where you are, and so right now my phone knows that the two closest collections of sculpture to me are the City of Sculpture in Hamilton and Pyramid Hill. But I can go to Fairfield, Indianapolis, or Columbus and see more sculptures. So this is a really nice piece of software, and it features where you are, but it definitely features Hamilton and Pyramid Hill here in Hamilton. We have a new program called Street Spark. We're going into building murals. Again, not the easiest thing in the world. Which buildings, which art, which artists, what kind of art? We've already had a little bit of rocking and rolling with this kind of idea. But again, it's changing the backdrop of our city. And so last year or 2 years ago, Chamber Magazine said, you know, art allows us to flourish, allows us to enjoy life, it allows us to be happy. It wasn't tied to an intrinsic ROI, though. It wasn't tied to any kind of proof of what that means to us, really. What has resulted from all of that? And so this was a great book, and this one's worth reading. It's a little easier. And it talks about the fact that in America today, this is Daniel Pink, he's a theorist, and he talks about we are, what's he say? We are liberated by abundance. That means the things we get, we live a good quality of life based on monetary things, but we aren't fulfilled by that. So there can be a lot of people who have very much abundance, but don't have very much joy or meaningfulness in their life. And what he argues is that this is about the quality of life. This is about that gut level, intrinsic part of our lives. And that's what makes us happy. That's what makes us successful. And that's why people are choosing where they live, especially in cities, over where they work. And we've assigned this sort of thought to the millennial generation. There's a book called Live First, Work Second that argues that the millennials are sort of the source of this trend. And I will argue that that's true, they are, but they aren't. It's not just about them. It goes back to all of us. And in fact, it goes back to John Adams, one of the founding fathers of our country, and one of my favorite quotes. "I must study politics and war, that my sons may have the liberty to study mathematics, philosophy, geography, navigation, commerce, agriculture, in order to give their children a right to study painting, poetry, music, architecture, and dance." How cool is that? And that's not millennials, that's John Adams. And then my other favorite quote, "All the ills of mankind, all the tragic misfortunes that fill the history books, all the political blunders, all the failures of great leaders have arisen merely from the lack of skill at dancing." And what he means is we relate better together when we're immersed in the arts. We actually can relate to each other, even as different as we are, as people, as cultures, when the arts are a part of that, when a quality of life is underlying what we're doing. So here's the big shift. This is my thesis for today. We were forced to look at instrumental focus and instrumental outcomes. What I'm arguing today is that we really need to focus on intrinsic things. We need to drive intrinsic things in our lives. The instrumental outcomes will be just that. They'll be outcomes. They will come automatically. We don't have to forget about the intrinsic quality of the arts in order to get the instrumental outcomes from those things. And here's my argument, and this is where I give the most credit for our state of being today in Hamilton, is in 2012, a new council, a new city manager, did a new strategic plan, and if you look at that strategic plan, there are instrumental outcomes on it. It's in a live, work, play sort of cycle. But most of the areas around living and playing are intrinsic. And what the city has done, from Joshua Smith to the firemen and the policemen and the public works department and all the people that work in the city, they have focused more on the intrinsic things. And what's happened, and I'll show you actually with numbers, we've added jobs and attracted private investment without ever focusing on that. So the intrinsic focus has been our success. The instrumental outcomes have been a benefit that have come from that focus. So here's the middle of the circle. The first line, create economic opportunity, that's the outcome we want. But we do it not by instrumental things. We do it by connecting people, building a positive image, and developing a sense of place. So when you read in the paper about 17 Strong and sense of place, and then you read on the other side of the paper about potholes and street conditions, you got to realize those are connected. If we do this first thing right, the second thing will come as an outcome. We will be able to develop more wealth as a city. We will develop more ability to fix our potholes if we focus on those things that are intrinsic. That's a big deal. And the city's got that in 2012, and we've been doing it ever since. So we started working on focusing on revival, on those things, those intrinsic things. Downtown living. It was a crazy, nutty idea. It won't work. It's a great thing to fill the building storefronts with new businesses. That's what we should do. The upper floors, if you can make something happen up there, it should be attorneys' offices or insurance offices. It should be commercial. The idea of turning a building like that into living in Hamilton downtown, and again, this was 2008, 2009, not so much. Nobody believed it. Not us who lived here, not the banks for sure. And it just took a handful of people who really thought differently, and they had to fight upstream to get it done. This was the condition of that building in 2008. But we found old pictures of when it was a great department store, part of our downtown quality of life. But it wasn't still there. So it took a lot of tools, it took a lot of money, it took some interventions of the community foundation, it took lots of leaps of faith, because nobody was going to believe that this was going to turn out that way. In fact, I'd walk through the building with the community foundation board, and they would say, really, honestly, is this going to work? You know, I don't know. And we all were that way. We all believed it was a really big stretch. What we didn't realize is that the quality of life impact of that was going to actually take on very quickly. And so it wasn't a matter of months that we filled this entire building with new downtown residents. And it wasn't that many people. Alfred and Patty are here. They were two of them. But they've lived there, but it was 29 people. 29 people don't change the face of downtown. But when 29 people started walking on the sidewalks and sweeping them off and walking in buildings and being there in the early morning and then late night, that changed people's minds who were driving by. And so the change in downtown Hamilton wasn't the handful of residents that started to live there. It was the fact that everybody wanted to know what in the world would cause people to live downtown Hamilton. It was so important that I might get out of my car to find out. So that's what's happened. And again, banks were against this. Nobody was against this. And the ROI on this is still yet to be proven because right now, those owners of this building are paying off a huge investment and turning that building back into a livable building. And it's very thin, and it's very fragile. And it's not a slam dunk that they're going to make money from this. But I think if we all do it together, there's a chance. Move next door, same thing happened. An out-of-town company comes, says we can turn this into living quarters. This one was even more of a stretch because it was more in worse condition and it had more money to be put into it. But it had, again, that industrial wealth built buildings like this back in the turn of the century. It was worth looking into. They made this a low-income housing project. That sounds bad for revitalization of cities. It sounds like that's not what we want, low-income people living in downtown Hamilton. But what we got was low-income creative people living in downtown Hamilton. Again, remember Richard Florida and creative class. So these are nice apartments. They're unique. They're different, and people have flocked to them. And again, 42 units in this building. It's been full almost since the day it opened. And again, don't forget, Richard Florida, who's a sociologist, not an artist, said this is what works. This is how the numbers work if you bring these kind of people to your community. So another example, we had 2 successes with housing. Why shouldn't we just turn the Journal News building into housing? Well, it just didn't work. It was the wrong kind of building. It was an industrial building. It was where they printed papers. It didn't seem to drive the idea that it could drive creative people to live in Hamilton. We got very lucky, though. We found creative people who turned it into a business. And so the School of the Arts from Butler Tech and Miami Valley Ballet, I think Michelle's here today too, they changed the game downtown. It wasn't the bricks and mortar that I was trying to save that became important. It was the 300-plus young adults who live in this building, work in this building, are part of downtown every day. You see them out on the sidewalks. You see their parents out on the sidewalks. You see them doing things in the community. And we have access to them in our community. And so this is an awesome thing. Again, it's that gut side of it. It was the people occupying the building, not the lights on, not the dollars per square foot for rent. It was about who occupied the space. So I will tell you, and this is not empirical, this is not proven, the only way we get Elder Beerman reset, the only way we get Star Tech to move into that building is because we had a Fitton Center. It's because we had Miami Valley Ballet downtown Hamilton. It's because we have City of Sculpture and Alexander Hamilton in the middle of High Street. Those are the reasons that we had an outcome of 684 new jobs and a new downtown grocery store. This is the old women's lingerie department in Elder Beerman. This is not what it looked like 5 years ago, 10 years ago, but it's what it looks like today. And the cool part is, for architects, it's an occupied building. But for this city, it's 684 jobs we did not have 3 years ago. And that's an amazing thing. And again, we can talk about the building and the rent and the deal we made with Star Tech to get them here and the tax credits that might have been involved. But really, if you ask them, they didn't come here because of any of that. They came here because there was a quality of life here that would support those jobs. So here's a 200 block of High Street at turn of the century. It was living quarters, it was commercial, it was office, it was everything. By the 1970s, the only thing left were storefronts. We had storefronts, fairly successful storefronts, but there were no spaces above the storefront level occupied. They were storage buildings. By 2000, that wasn't even storefronts. This whole block was 2% occupied. The one attorney in the Harry Wilkes building was the only occupant of this entire block. It was otherwise completely empty. The leaves weren't even blown off the sidewalk because there was no purpose to doing that. And again, remember the condition of these buildings and the things that drove them. But again, the things that succeeded, the things that caused the change, the spark, they were quality of life things. Residential for sure. Residential and commercial. A whole new family moving into downtown, living upstairs and having their shop downstairs. How cool is that? A new restaurant. How long did we wait? We got Ryan's, and then that was our only choice for the longest time. Now we have 2 good restaurants downtown. And again, a big change in the quality of life, especially if you work downtown and want to vary up your lunch menu every once in a while. Again, great outcome and about quality of life. And then this is the coolest part. Lights on at night. After 5 o'clock, downtown Hamilton is no longer dead. There are stores with lights on, and there are people in those stores. And not just the people who live downtown. And that's even the coolest part. It's not just about that residential influx in downtown Hamilton. So 2016, this block is 100% occupied. Every story, every square inch, every foot of every building has an occupied tenant in it. There is no empty space in this entire block. North 3rd Street, German Village. It's where we let the immigrants like Ian move. But it was one of our greatest neighborhoods. It's one of our 3 National Register historic districts. 3rd Street is the center of that. It has the Lane Library, it has the Community Foundation, it has United Way, it has restaurants, mostly empty restaurants. But the city, again, in the wisdom, again, I can't get over this. There's all this pressure to do the things that you have to do in a city. Pay for public works, pay for public safety, pay for fixing potholes. But the city and the foundation and the library teamed up and they changed this entire block. And they made a huge change in German Village. Again, I cannot show you where the cash from that investment is pouring into the next thing. I can show you pictures and I can tell you anecdotally what's happening. But it's not a direct ROI, it's an indirect ROI. Right of way, 2 young people, Ty and Lauren Smallwood, started the Hamilton Flea. That's a very successful thing in downtown Cincinnati. We have one in Hamilton now. It draws as many people as the Cincinnati Flea draws, one weekend every month. A huge change, a huge influx of people that never came to Hamilton before, a huge influx of dollars that never came to Hamilton before. And look at the crowd, every other weekend. I see Terry, you're right in that picture. So there's Hamiltonians there too. So here's another one. Here's another one of those soft impacts. Here's another one of those intrinsic things that we decided was important for Hamilton. That is increased home ownership. And again, the 3rd Street Plaza didn't increase home ownership, but right away it turned the ability for us to start flipping houses, to turning them into owner-occupied houses in German Village into a reality. So you take a house that was on the demolition list for the land bank. It was in terrible condition. The design review board said it's too important that then we should start tearing houses down in our historic districts. What can we do? So the Corps Fund took this house on. We stabilized the outside. We actually found the old house inside the older house inside the siding that was on the house there. It was actually in good shape. We started putting it back together. We rebuilt the box gutters. We stabilized the outside of the house and we stopped. We said this is what we're going to do to make it a good neighbor, to make it part of the new neighborhood, and to wait to match it up with somebody who wants to be an owner-occupant. Not a landlord, not a rental property, an owner-occupant who has skin in the game and lives in the neighborhood. So inside, it was hard to sell. Joe Giuliano is wearing that mask because at his feet there are dead raccoons, there's human feces, there's all kinds of horror that just makes you want to think that this house has to be torn down. But what these guys did in a very craftsman-like way is they stripped the house back down to its guts. They took out the electric and the plumbing and the mechanical ductwork. They took out everything but the studs and the structure and said, now we can show people this house and we can have a vision for where it's headed. And right away, again, within a matter of months, we found a family who wanted to match up to this house and turn it into a house. Our entire investment in this house was $165,000, and the appraisal, fortunately, came in right at that number. So this family was able to move in this house, a brand new house made from the guts of a very important historic house, but put back as a new house. And again, why does home ownership have anything to do with jobs, with the general fund, with the number of police and firemen that we can afford? It's because this is changing the game for the people who are putting money into that system. It's putting them at the front of the system instead of in the middle or at the end. It's creating a situation where we're turning our city around. So before and after 1 year apart, Ian did the same thing with a house on North 2nd. Andy Wetzler and Carrie Pate are doing the same thing with a house on North 2nd, block north of Ian's house. So we're succeeding at this. We have 6 houses under contract, and we're continuing to put those houses in. All that is being done through money from the Hamilton Community Foundation. So again, the board of the Community Foundation, they get it. They're funding this. We're turning the money back, and we're putting it to the next house. We are not giving away grants. We are not giving away house value to clients. Whatever dollars we put in the house, we get back when we sell the house. They have to figure it out. Now, in 3 years, I think these houses will be worth a lot more money, and those owners will take advantage of that recovery. That's not coming back to the core fund. But we are giving away these dollars. We're not putting $200,000 in a house and selling it for $100. It's not possible for us to recycle and move forward if we do that. Economic vitality, it's a kind of a soft word, but I've read a study that said you can measure a city's economic vitality by the number of coffee shops it has. We have gained 4 coffee shops from 0 to 4 in the last 5 years. So that's at least we're on that scale. Events. festivals. We've had Ice Fest and Operation Pumpkin start to really change downtown. And what amazes me about that event, after 20 years of Ice Fest and 5 years of Operation Pumpkin, I still meet people who said they've never been to Hamilton before at those events, which is awesome. And then this, I'm in that crowd actually, about right there. This was Operation Pumpkin. This was the concert in the middle of High Street. This is a sign that things are different in Hamilton. If you get to see that in person, you see it and you feel it. If you don't get to see it in person, you got to take my word for it. It's different. How about our utilities? Are they capable of affecting our economic vitality? I think they are. And the funniest part is that one of the most important ways they've done that is through a quality of life issue, the taste of our water. We can now leverage that as a quality of life issue in Hamilton. And this is what the outcomes are. We get private development, we get new jobs. These things did not happen, and I can't speak for every owner and every person that I'm going to reference today, but these things did not happen in a vacuum. They happened because things were changing. You can talk to the Community First Board, or you can talk to Jeff Thurman, and they will tell you it was the change of what was happening in Hamilton that caused them to make a $6 million investment in a place like this. It's an unbelievable change from Ringgold's Furniture Store to an office headquarters where there are 60 white-collar jobs in Hamilton, Ohio. I mean, that is so different from Hamilton 4 years ago. Another quality of life investment. The city pulled together transportation money, they pulled together grants, they pulled together foundation money, and they were able to create River's Edge Amphitheater. And it's been a huge success. And I had someone tell me, well, what do you charge for your concerts? What do you make from doing that? What's your ROI from building the River's Edge? And I say it's a big fat zero in terms of dollars that we charge for events. Because in fact, our concerts are free. Why would you do that? There's no return on investment on that. That's not true. Ask anybody in Hamilton what the biggest change in Hamilton has been in the last 10 years who doesn't sit in rooms like this and hear talks like this. They will tell you it's River's Edge. And then you say, what else comes from that? And from that, Joe and Sarah Markham gave us $4 million, gave the foundation $4 million, and they finished Markham Park. ROI, it happened. And this is going to open in May. Just an unbelievable place. And this is where it gets really great, and I don't have to speak in third hand. We put out RFPs for the south of Dayton lot, we called it. It's the parking lot that was south of Mercy Hospital. We got back 0 responses from developers for years. Once Markham Park was announced, we started getting RFPs back. We started getting people interested. And in fact, sitting here today, I don't have to speak for him because he's here, is Jim Cohen from CMC Properties. They are building 115 new market rate apartments on the lot south of Mercy Hospital across from Markham Park. In fact, they're going to call it the Markham Apartments. So Jim, you want to talk about the ROI that made you do that?
No. The only thing worse than coming to a meeting completely ill-prepared is following a guy as tall and good-looking and eloquent as him. But to be very honest with you, there are 2 things that people want when they're deciding where to live, and 2 things they're looking for. One is culture, and the second is girls. So if you're a young millennial male, you want to know where the clubs are and restaurants and all the places you can take your girls out on a date. But if you're anybody else, they want parks, they want bike trails, they want rivers, they want cool downtowns. And when I came to Hamilton for the very first time, and it was a year ago, I got here an hour early because I thought it was an hour from my office in Blue Ash. I got here an hour early because I always like to leave a little bit of time. And as I'm driving up the road and I'm looking at my watch and saying to myself, oh my God, I got here in no time. I passed the sculpture park on the left side, and it doesn't have a very grand entrance, but I saw this huge sculpture, and I did a U-turn, and I pulled in, and I drove through it because it wasn't open, so I didn't have to pay. I just kind of drove through it, and I'm like, oh my God, I couldn't believe that I live 30 miles from here and have never been to that beautiful sculpture park. And the more time that I've spent in Hamilton, and I've come across, I came through the center. Ian gave me a tour. I just shut off. Ian gave me a tour, and I literally joined that day. I was so blown away, impressed with this facility and everything they offer. I walked into the YMCA, same thing. Just all of the resources that this city has
convinced me that this is a city that I need to make this kind of investment. Even though people haven't invested significant money in downtown ground-up construction in decades in downtown Hamilton, I am convinced, because of the resources that the city's founding fathers invested in Hamilton, everything is here. It is the greatest downtown. I've been developing real estate for 30 years all over greater Cincinnati, and I have never seen a city that has the resources, the natural resources, but also the man-made infrastructure that the city of Hamilton has. So I don't know if that answers your question, but that's what brought me. Thank you.
So that leads me to another point I want to leave you with. I'm not done, but it seems to be, for me, that the people who get it the easiest are the ones who are coming here from the outside. The people who have the hardest time getting sold on this is ourselves, the people that grew up here and lived here for generations. It's the Sarah, it's the Tommy, it's the Jim, it's the Tim McDonald moved down the street from me and told me that Hamilton was such an awesome place. I said, well, you and 3 other people know that. Because we don't believe it, and we have trouble with it. Main Street, same thing. It is a block, a business district in my mind, of empty storefronts. But when I talked to Sue Ellen Stretch, who was Sue Ellen Marshall, she said it was a neighborhood when I was growing up. We lived upstairs from my father's business, and we had dinner clubs, and we were neighbors, and we had friends who lived on Main Street. It was a neighborhood, just like the other 17 neighborhoods in Hamilton. And we're going to try to do that here as well. Same idea. We're going to buy buildings strategically or opportunistically. We're going to not just put back storefronts. We're going to put back all the apartments that exist above those storefronts. And with the buildings that the Core Fund controls right now, we have the opportunity to put 38 new apartments back into Main Street in places like where Sue Ellen Marshall grew up. So we're looking forward to that. It was, again, a really cool part of our history. Anybody know what this building is? It's pretty hard. It's pretty old. You have to be pretty old to remember it looking like that. Any guesses? The 4 windows are one of the few things that give it away. So again, a bookend to Main Street, one of the most important buildings in Hamilton, and it has ostensibly been a storage warehouse for 50 years. So we're going to put that back. And not only are we going to put it back, we have a restaurant from Oxford who wants to put it back, the whole building. So we're going to have a first floor brewery, a second floor kitchen and chef's table, and a rooftop dining patio that is going to be on top of that building. And again, if you've gotten to be on top of that building ever, it's a pretty cool view. And it makes you see what Hamilton looks like. So right there's the rooftop, and that's the view that is going to be from that new restaurant. And it's going to be open by midsummer. Another quality of life discovery in Hamilton. We had a few folks discover that our river corridor, because of the levee, it made it hard to get to, but it made it very still water, and it made it a very good course for rowing. And again, rowing is something I think of Philadelphia in Ivy League schools, and I don't think of Hamilton, Ohio in rowing. But I've been on the rowing club board now for about 10 years. That's about the length of their existence. And they have been nothing but success. And here's the cool part. They bring kids not only from Hamilton and Baden, they bring kids from Talawanda, Lakota, Mason, Fairfield, Cincinnati Christian, and Ross. And they're all members of the Great Miami Rowing Team. And so that is a draw for Hamilton that's huge. But here's, again, where the soft stuff, the intrinsic stuff launched. With the help of the city, and Joshua, and the council, and with the help of the foundation, we took over control of one of the buildings on the old Champion Paper Mill site. And we're still trying, to develop that into a full-blown boathouse, where we will have access to the water, we'll have indoor observation decks, we'll have training areas, and we will change that riverfront building from what was a cogeneration power station to a boathouse for rowing on the Great Miami River. But here's what it did. It started us thinking, and it started a conversation about why can't we do that with the entire Champion Mill paper plant? And I promise you that conversation couldn't have taken place in Hamilton 5 years ago. But because it's now, and because we've had successes like this, and we've had successes with rowing, we say, why not? Let's have a conversation. And so in doing so, it starts badly, because you see how bad and how difficult it's going to be to reuse a plant like this. But then it turns into a conversation that actually starts to attract people, and attract people not from Hamilton again. We're looking at a 681,000 square foot indoor athletic center. We're looking at a $100 million investment from outside of Hamilton, and we're looking at a 300-mile radius in which people will visit Hamilton every weekend. for tournaments. And in his current facility out in Lancaster, he brings 8,000 people every weekend into Lancaster, Pennsylvania. So it's a big deal. I think it's a big deal because Champion Paper has touched almost every family in Hamilton for 100 years. I mean, who doesn't have a relative that worked for Champion Paper? Anybody? I mean, raise your hand. It's probably a half of this room that people are connected to Champion Paper. But we're going to reuse that building. We're going to insert a lot of new building in it. And that's cool, and that's dollars because that's visitors, and that's pretty arithmetic and pretty instrumental. But where I get really excited is across the street in Mill 2, what we call Mill 2. That's a building that we're going to try to use historic tax credits for, and we're going to try to make it into a 200-room hotel, a conference center, and restaurants. And you say, no, come on, not so much. But I found pictures of Champion when all the windows were still there, when it was daylight inside in a very cool building. We've had this building actually scanned with 3D lasers so that we know where every beam and every brick in that building goes and how it works. And this is the layout for a new hotel in that building. You can see that it's so wide that it wouldn't work to have rooms on the outside walls. We actually had to create a center corridor with daylight to make it make sense. And this gets cool. And this is walking into Mill 2 at Champion. A year and a half from now, 2 years from now. So all that structure you see is existing. It's all going to stay. This is a 2-story lobby to the hotel. And this is the basement, truly, of the Mill 2, because that concrete structure you see there, that's what held up the paper machine. That was what the paper machine rollers were sitting over on the upper floor. And so that's going to remain. It's going to be part of the structure. It actually informs the structure for the bar. And those windows are all gone. They've been gone for 50 years. They've been bricked in, but they're all going back to their original look. So again, you can't imagine the square footage, hundreds of thousands of square feet, but Sam Byler, who's the developer of this project, he's going to make it into conference rooms and training rooms and restaurants and event center rooms. To your left here, as we come down the hallway, will be the new restaurant. And again, those windows are 13 feet high, 8 feet wide, and they overlook the water from a few feet away from the edge of the river. Can you see okay? All right, I won't play all this, but I want to at least get upstairs and show you the upstairs corridor where the two hotels come together. And keep saying to yourself, this is Hamilton, Ohio. So this is the 2-story lobby above for the hotel. And this is a 500-person event banquet room. So to get daylight in the plant around the turn of the century, Peter Thompson designed this plant to have a huge clear-story atrium over the center of the plant. This is what the level where all the paper machines were. So this is a level where there will be 2 outside walls that are truly inside walls to the hotel. And that daylight coming from the roof is part of the original plant design. So this is the actual space between the 2 double-loaded corridors of the hotel. So this starts with a conversation about a quality of life again, and it ends with how many jobs, how much tax base is this place going to create. It's an enormous number, and I don't know. But again, seeing a picture with Champion Mill paper, the lights are on, every window's in place, that's something we're going to see again in 2018. So here's my takeaways. Quality of life investment is paramount to the city's strategic plan. That's their decision. They did it. Every person you see from council, I see one council person here, Kathy Klink, they did this. And the ROI from that wasn't we got our money back for what we invested in. We didn't get our money back from Markham Park or the 3rd Street Plaza, but we got 3,000 new jobs in the last 30 months in Hamilton, Ohio. And you can ask some of those people. I don't know. I can't ask all of them. Most of them will tell you that I've heard from that the quality of life investment that Hamilton was making was the difference. The second part is, if anybody thinks the city can do this by themselves, they would be wrong, in my opinion. If anybody thinks that anybody else could do it without the city, they would be wrong, in my opinion. What the city has done best is they've made it the job of everyone in the city to do this. And so there's lots of organizations, public organizations, private organizations. There's Community First Solutions, there's CMC Properties. They're all part of this solution. And if they didn't have the city's help, they would fail. If the city didn't have their help, we would fail. So it's an all in one boat kind of performance. And then this is what I think we have to really get comfortable with. We should not be intimidated by our history. Our history has very good things in it and also has very bad things in it. But we seem to be non-believers in our ability to recover ourselves. And so the last 2 years, a group of very creative people with the Chamber, with Community First, with the city, have developed this We Are Hamilton story. And to me, it's a story that we know because it's our story, but we forget. And so I don't know how many people have seen this, but I'm going to end today with these 2 videos because they make you feel really good about what you know and what you always knew about Hamilton.
Everybody has a story about the chances they took, about the times they tried and failed, the times they triumphed. Everybody has a story that is personal and unique. Every city has a story, the collected stories of its people, woven together, turning individuals into a community. The story defines us. The story drives us. Men and women with hats full of wisdom and coats full of muscle made their way to this garden spot, applied ingenuity, courage, resourcefulness, and drive. Together we built our Hamilton, a city born of pioneers, and we raised our children to be strong and brave and spirited, then watched them excel in business, the arts, science, athletics, whatever endeavor they chose. We worked hard. We played hard. We made our way. We made our name mean something to the world. We rose to the challenge time and again. We conquered, we endured, we excelled, we embrace our legacy. We thrive on the challenges put before us. Today's challenge is not of nature, but of information. A river of knowledge, at times rough and unwieldy like the Great Miami. We can tame that river too, with the same fortitude, the same courage, the same pluck and drive. We find ourselves on the verge of the next Renaissance, a golden age of the arts, of technology, a new industry of the mind and spirit built upon the foundation of hard work and perseverance, of steel and sweat. The stories never end. We remember them. We tell them to our children. We pass along our vision, our courage, our innovation, our way of seeing through. We give birth to artists, entrepreneurs, builders, makers, doers. We create new ways to meet new challenges. We move forward in the face of adversity. This is our next story, the story of innovation, rising to the challenge, bringing new technologies, teaching our children the lessons of those that came before: spirit, passion, drive, courage. We will create the next legacy. We will write the next story. We are the past. We are the future. We are the story. We are Hamilton.
That was 2015. So the purpose of 2015 was to remind us of our story, to purpose of 2016 was to engage in it. And the tagline is embrace, engage, interact. If I leave you with anything today, is that's important for all of us to do. And what this video is showing, yes. Oh, sorry. What this video is showing is people who are doing that. So instead of the quick snippets of all the things in Hamilton we did, we featured some people who are really changing the face of Hamilton. And so that's what we want everybody to do. So this is 2016, We Are Hamilton.
We have this city. We love this city. We are lifted on the shoulders of pioneers and spurred on by a changing world, preparing this city to blossom with our vision. We see the promise, and we go to work, from dawn till dusk and all through the night, making it our city, a better place for ourselves and for our children. A garden spot on the river. Our city trusts us to make it glisten, to find its glory, to make it beautiful, to hear it sing, to make it profit our families and our future. What do? Before the sun shines, we envision the dawn. Rolling up our sleeves, we make the city strong, helping each other, inspiring the future. Finding the forgotten and forsaken corners, we patch and polish and put on a fresh coat of paint, giving old bones new muscle and new skin. We open shops and restaurants, breweries and bakeries. Our city has secrets to reveal and hidden charm to unlock. We make artifacts useful and decorate concrete with the colors of our soul. We plant the seeds to grow fruits and flowers and take them to market where their colors shine. We dress this city with light. This city, ready to show the world. We believe in ourselves. We believe in this city. We go where we are needed and take care of each other. We make a pot of coffee for a heart-to-heart chat, throw big parties and invite the world, find places to gather and share, feed each other with food and love, raise each other's spirits. We honor those who came before us, protect the children and the vulnerable, lend a hand to our neighbors because they are this city too, dressing those without clothes so they won't know the cold, giving them the energy to join us in our quest for the future. We give of ourselves, our time, our energy, our resources. We help our children tell their stories. We teach them to be strong, creative, and kind-hearted. We let them find their passions. We let them find the future we see inside them. We love this city and believe in this city. We believe in ourselves, in this time, in this place, and in the future. We are Hamilton.
Okay, so I'll answer questions if anybody has questions or comments. I think Ian has a microphone.
Anyone? Yes, we have.
Mike, how about Ohio Casualty and the Fifth Third Building?
Okay, I'm not a prognosticator, but the Ohio Casualty Building is owned by an out-of-town investor. And one of the things I've learned is site control is everything. So the city has purchased properties when people thought it was a bad idea to do that. Champion Mill comes to mind first and foremost. Joshua Smith took a huge risk suggesting to council that the city purchase that building. But had we not done that, everything I showed you today would not be happening. So owning and controlling property is everything. And so the investor who owns the Ohio Casualty property owns 800 other properties around the country, and it's just not on his radar to do much about that, or he wants to do all or nothing. And so we need to maintain control of our properties. The Journal News did a wonderful thing when they left Hamilton, and I say they leave in Hamilton, but they said, we will hold on to this building until you have a use for it. We will not sell it to an investor or speculator. We will wait. And they did, and now we have Miami Valley Ballet and School of the Arts in that building. Yes?
When the buildings in the Hamilton Mill are open, are they going to incorporate the Champion name at all in anything?
Yes, it will be Spooky Nook Sports at the Champion Mill, and that name will stay. In fact, they're actually talking to international paper now about using some of the old logos from Champion in the T-shirts and the spirit wear that they use for the plant, for the center.
Nope, came from Lancaster,
It did.
Pennsylvania.
It's on Spooky Nook Road. It was just a random thing, but it's become a very well-known brand now because people travel from all over the country to go there. So he's bringing his brand name here, but he's keeping the Champion Mill in the name. George.
On a scale of 1 to 10, how likely is it for the sports complex to actually occur?
Again, you're asking me to prognosticate, but Sam is spending serious money moving this forward. He's not signed the contract and he's not hired the contractors yet. I'm going to say it's a 9.5 on a scale of 1 to 10, that it is going to happen.
Where's Steve Kuhn with regard to the Fifth Third building?
They've purchased it from the Core Fund. They are redeveloping it. They are working on new tenants. And in fact, they have enough new tenant conversations going to fill the entire building. They haven't signed anybody yet, but they're working on enough ideas and enough people. And again, bringing new businesses in from out of town, which I love, and they're talking about having that whole building filled. And it will be office commercial space. It won't be residential. All right, so remember those 3 words. Remember, quality of life is everything, and we have it. If you don't think we have it, you weren't paying attention for the last 30 minutes. Thank you very much.
Ladies and gentlemen, Mr. Mike Dingeldein. We're able to give Mike a gift there. Lieutenant General Rick Lynch gave us books for all our participants this year in Celebrating Self, his signed copy of Adapt or Die. Quite fitting today, really, when you think about it. How proud are we of this city? Yeah? Incredible things going on, and the Fitton Center is very proud to be a small cog in a very large wheel that's going around in this city. It's, as I said, it's the community. It's community here today and throughout the city that are making things happen. I do have one thank you that I missed out before we started, and that is to our pianist today, Mr. Dave Ballou. A gentleman who knows his way around not only a paper mill, but also 88 keys of a piano, and is also one of the founding board members here at the Fitton Center, so quite fitting to have him here today. I did ask Mike to play the piano, but he wouldn't do it. It's been great to have you. Thank you once again to Mr. Michael Dingeldein. I look forward to seeing you here again at the Fitton Center very soon. Have a lovely afternoon.